Fox News radio host Todd Starnes is out with a new book. It's called The Deplorables Guide to Making America Great Again. He says just because Donald Trump won the election, it's no time for evangelicals to sit on their heels. And he joins us now with more. Welcome, Todd.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks for your time today. Appreciate it.
Great to be here.
Well, one reason so many evangelicals voted for Donald Trump is because they believed that he would protect religious liberties.
Yeah.
Now, so far, we haven't seen much activity from the Trump administration regarding that. What's your sense? Do you feel like that people are starting to get nervous? What's your take?
Well, I think given the alternative, Hillary Clinton, anything was better than that. So I think people are cautiously optimistic. I certainly am cautiously optimistic. But I believe a lot of folks are going to wait and see how Judge Gorsuch turns out. Of course, Donald Trump's pick for the Supreme Court. To be honest with you, I have a column out, and I have some concerns about Judge Gorsuch. They're putting him forward as a conservative man, and yet he attends and is a member, an active member of an ultra-liberal congregation. So I'm wondering how such a conservative person could be a part of such a liberal, anti-Trump congregation, for example.
What about any of the decisions that he's made? Any of those trouble you?
Not necessarily. I knew going in that Donald Trump was not going to be a staunch social conservative. He promised to defend religious liberty, and I'm going to take him at his word on that. And I'm comfortable with some of the picks he's made. Jeff Sessions for Attorney General, for example. He's sort of putting a hold on the the aggressive transgender policies that the Obama administration had shoved down the throats of public schools. So I'm encouraged by some of those picks.
What about any rulings by Judge Gorsuch? Any of those rulings concern you?
Don't know a lot about Judge Gorsuch, and certainly he has, he says he is pro-life, and he is, his papers seem to indicate that. But again, there are some concerns in some circles. Look, a lot of evangelicals support Judge Gorsuch. I'm just, again, very concerned, and here's the reason why. Republican presidents have a shady track record when it comes to putting justices on the Supreme Court. Remember, it was President Eisenhower who said one of the worst decisions he made as president was putting Earl Warren on the highest court in the land. So Republicans, when they put judges on the Supreme Court, for whatever reason, their gavels go wobbly and they go left. And that's why I think we have to be very, very careful with Judge Gorsuch.
Well, a recent poll shows religious freedom is still the greatest concern among evangelicals. Even with a sympathetic administration, it's still that greatest concern. Why do you think that is?
Well, for one reason, we have seen a massive cultural shift in just a short amount of time. President Obama promised to fundamentally transform America, and he delivered on that promise. So we have a lot of work to undo what has been done, and that's going to take time, and it's going to take perseverance as well. And I say that because when you look at the nation's education system, that's the engine that's being used to change the country, to change the culture. That can't be undone just overnight. It's going to take some time. And quite frankly, I hope the Education Secretary, Betsy DeVos, another great pick, by the way, I hope number one on her agenda is dismantling the Department of Education and returning control of the public schools back to the local level.
Well, it seems that secularists are pushing harder than ever to remove religious expression from the public square. Give us some of the more outrageous examples of this push.
Well, one of the most egregious, I thought, was a federal judge's decision in Mississippi involving a public school there. They had been going back and forth over religion in the public school. And so the judge said, look, here's the deal. Do anything remotely religious, I'm going to slap you with a $10,000 fine. Well, the high school marching band was playing How Great Thou Art as part of their halftime routine, and the school, afraid that they were going to be fined, told the marching band they could not perform How Great Thou Art during halftime. So halftime rolls around, and this is the message in this book, and I tell the story in the book. Halftime rolls around, everybody's sort of like, what do we do now? What do you do? There's this awkward silence, and all of a sudden, a little girl, one of the high school cheerleaders, started singing that song, How Great Thou Art. And then one by one, people in the stadium began to sing along. And before you knew it, the entire stadium was singing that wonderful Christian hymn. And that's the lesson. All it takes is just one person, Mark, one person to take a stand. And when you do that, others will stand alongside. And we are a mighty voice, believers here in America.
Amen. That's a wonderful story. That's awesome. Well, how else can Christians push back against the tide? Do you have any pieces of advice for us today?
Well, look, the whole point of the Deplorables Guide is to encourage believers to get involved and be good citizens. And I use illustrations from a sermon delivered by the late Adrian Rogers. He preached a sermon on what it means to be a good citizen. There's a chapter in my book called The Happy Warrior. Christians, we're supposed to be happy. We're supposed to be ambassadors for Christ. And you can't do that if you're defending religious liberty by marching in the streets and hollering at people and burning down buildings. That's not what we're called to do. So my book illustrates how we can take a stand, and we can do it and maintain our strong Christian witness.
Wow, that's great. Well, some see Trump's victory as a window of grace for the church to wake up and re-engage the culture. What is your opinion? I mean, do you think that this moment in time, that is what's taking place, and what is at stake if the church fails to take that what's given them?
You know, Franklin Graham said we were at a moral tipping point, and I believe he was pretty accurate there with that description. Look, I do believe that divine providence played a role in what happened on Election Day. I think it's really there's really no other explanation in my book. But we do have a responsibility. I think Christians are going to have to engage the culture, and if we do not, then we're going to lose the culture. We came very close to losing the Supreme Court, not just for an election cycle, but for generations. That's how close it was. So we're going to have to get up, and we're going to have to fight for our freedom. Here's the reason why people always ask me, why are you always going off on religious liberty? Well, because it's our first freedom. And my contention is, if they're able to take away our first freedom, then all of our other freedoms are up for grabs too. And that would be a very, very sad thing to happen in this great country.
Amen. Amen to that. Well, once again, the book is called The Deplorables Guide to Making America Great Again by Fox News radio host Todd Starnes. Thanks so much for your time today, sir.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.